everyone, Neen here from the Hyperactive Bookworm here with David Green, and we'll be talking about, okay, may not work. There we go, sort of.
Nice.
No
I can see it.
Yeah.
I just saw my hand when I did this, and whenever I do it, I'm always kind of like, my hand is huge. It's like, why is it so big? It's like, and every time that I kind of wave at people on these kind of things, it gets my attention. I'm like, what is, because it doesn't look that big when I look at it in real life, but it is because I'm quite a big guy. So it's, yeah. Anyway, I saw it again. It's like, why is it so big?
Oh, I love you, David. This is awesome. So Path of War is book 2 in the, here it is, in the Empire of Ruin, which In Solitudes Shadow is book 1. If you haven't read this, go get it, go read it. It's amazing. It's a good sized book, and it will look like a tiny little ant compared to the behemoth that is Path of War. But let me tell you, I read it and I read it again. It is so good. So this comes out July 15th, is that right?
I believe so.
Yay! Well, I'll make sure that in the comments below I put the pre-order link for people to go and get it, because yay, I'm so excited by it. All right.
I'm excited too. I don't look it, but I am. I'm excited. I'm excited to find it out, because it's weird, because like In Solitude Shadow took longer to come out from writing it. I wrote it. I wrote it in 3 weeks in like May 2020, and then it went off in development. And it was quite a long development edit process on that one. But it came out then in June 2021. So Path of War, I started writing it in October 2021, and it's going out in July. So it's not as long of a time, but it feels longer, like a lot longer, for some reason.
Yeah, maybe because you know, so excited about the sequel. I absolutely loved this book, and I am so excited about, because it's now a quadrilogy, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, it was going to be a trilogy at the start, and that's kind of how I pitched it to Era River Publishing. I was like, yeah, it's going to be a trilogy, mainly because when they were looking for submissions, they were like, we want trilogies, and I was like, yes, it'll be a trilogy. And but I kind of did have it mapped out a little bit as a trilogy, right? And then when I was doing the second one, so the first one, we tried to do like epic dark fantasy on like a smaller page count, so it's just under 300 pages, which is like standard for most genres, but it's quite short for epic fantasy. But I always knew the second book was going to be bigger, and then I did the outline for it. And you know, if I do an outline for something, I will go off the outline every so often. But I was kind of like, yeah, judging by the outline, I think 80,000 words, maybe 80,000 words. And then I started writing it, got to about Christmas, and I was like, it's going to be about 100,000 words. It was like after Christmas, and I was like, it's probably going to be about 110,000. And then I was like, I think it's going to be about 140,000. And also, I think it's going to be 4 books, because I got to the point where I was following my outline quite well, and I was about 40,000 words in, and I was like, you know, maybe I can cut some stuff out, because generally with my writing, I don't cut a lot of stuff out. I usually add stuff in on after the first draft is done or whatever. But this one was quite complete, and I knew I was quite kind of writing it a little bit kind of longer than I would generally. And I was like, maybe I can cut a few things out of this. But I got to like about 40,000 words, and there's a line in the outline that says Colleen, who is one of the main characters, goes on an adventure on her own, because like I knew that she needed to go and do something on her own, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I did the outline. I did the outline before it even finished the first book, I think.
Oh wow.
Or at least the development edits on the first book. And so I was like, yeah, Colleen goes on an adventure. So in my head, I was thinking this will be like a chapter or maybe 2 chapters of this, just a diversion. It's like 5,000 words, 6,000 words, which goes off just as a little kind of meeting with someone or a little scrap or something. And it ended up being like about a 25,000 word sequence. And it's like we cut away from and come back to, and cut away from and come back to. It's got its own like little kind of arc and everything. And it's, I think it's like, I think it's probably my favorite part of the book as well, actually, which and it really kind of kicks off the second half of the book. But once when I got back to it, after like when I finished that sequence and Colleen went back onto the outline, I was like, I still have like 6 pages of this 10-page outline to do. And I'm at like 80,000 words now. So I was like, I'll have to move some of this stuff into book 3. And I was like, book 3 is going to be about 300,000 words if this is the way that I'm going. And that's fine for epic fantasy, but also I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do like one book, which was 60,000 words, and the second book be more than double the length of that. It ended up being, I think it's ended up being 132,000, and then do another one that was double the size of that one. I didn't want to do that. It just look weird when they're all together. So, yeah. So I was like, I think I'm gonna do 4 books. I think this will work as 4 books, and they River agreed with me, so it's 4 books now. So yeah, long answer to that question.
No, that's so cool. I'm excited, and I appreciate it as being a reader. 500 and what was it? 535 pages or
something like that.
Yeah, for the second book. I was like, I still want more, but it's nice to have finished the book.
Right. Yeah, I think it tells like a pretty definitive story, and obviously there's more to come, but I think it tells it was the right place to kind of end it. I think, even though it is it's not a massive cliffhanger ending, because there is stuff that is resolved. There's questions that are left over, but like,
oh yes,
plot arcs are resolved, like, I think it was the right place to kind of leave it and move on.
Yeah.
There was going to be more to the ending, but I took it out and I put it into book 3. So
cool. No, it was a good place to end. Absolutely. Let's start on the questions. All right. Can you describe Path of War in 3 words?
I can. The Path of War.
Waiting for someone to do that.
Right. Well, it kind of sums it up pretty well. All the characters are on their own path of war, I guess. What could I sum up with the 3? Adventure.
Yes.
Grief.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say war, because that's like it says it on the tin.
It is absolutely.
But I want to intrigue.
Oh yeah, I can go with that one. Cool. Yeah, I'll work with those ones. That's awesome. Now, there were some really intense scenes in this book. Like, you need to go read it. Like, folks, it is amazing, but there are some really intense, slightly horrific scenes. Now, I want to know, did you take revenge on anyone from your life who has crossed you for inspiration?
Just my publisher, really. No. Did I? Not really. No. Like the thing is, I don't really. Yeah. There's no one really in it that's like based on anyone that I know or anything like that. I have used some names. Like I do this thing where like, obviously you've noticed because you've read them, where like I do like a little introduction to each chapter, which is like a little bit like world building thing, where it'd be like a quote, or it'd be like a little kind of like proverb or something like that. And I've used those names from people that I kind of know. Like there's Oliver the second, which my son is called Oliver, and like so Oliver, and there's Our publisher Michelle River was mentioned as the river heretic who was
Yeah.
burned at the stake. So maybe, but there's other people in it as well. So there's that, but like none of the people that like have horrific things are real, and a lot of that kind of stuff comes from two places. Like one of it is to kind of show that like the the magic system is central to this
Yes.
story. Like the characters are the main thing, but then the magic system is central to the story. As if like, and in the first book, it was shown as this like wondrous kind of thing, like where people kind of held it in like a high regard, and there was like a disagreement about where some people are trying to weaponize it and some people don't weaponize it. But in the second book, we kind of delve a little bit deeper into it, and we kind of see its nature a little bit more, and it's not as benign as maybe people thought it was going to be. So what I wanted to do, so there
Definitely
is,
darker. It's
yeah,
definitely goes into that darker, which is
yeah,
awesome.
there is that, and it's more about people's nature and how they would use this kind of thing, and so that's where some of that comes from. So I wanted to kind of not kind of beat around the bush when magic is being, and there's a lot more magic being used in this book as a weapon because of what happens in the first book. So I wanted to kind of show that and kind of show that like this is what this can do, like, and some of the characters talk about it. Colleen talks about it quite a lot, where like she used to think of it as this beautiful thing that could heal people and protect people, and then she's seen it used in a very, very different kind of, and she's seen it used before, but now it's kind of struck home a little bit, where it's like, hang on, like this thing isn't what I thought it was. So that's one of the things. And the other thing then as well, with some of the scenes that are quite intense, and I think you're probably talking about a particular character. It's probably Nexus, I think you're probably talking about. Yeah, so that comes from a very kind of character driven kind of thing, because he is a guy that we meet in the first book a little bit, and he's quite intense in the first book, and we get to spend a lot more time with him in the second book. And he was an interesting character to write, and I had a lot of fun with him. And his is like a real kind of descent into madness kind of arc. But he was already quite mad to start off with, but he was able to kind of control that and kind of hide it from people. But what I kind of wanted to do with that, and again, the magic is quite central, where it's like he sees himself as like, and people like him as a very like essential thing to how this world works. And now the person that he has placed all his loyalty to and possibly love to and some other things sees him as, or he thinks he sees him as disposable. So it's kind of, he's trying to find his own place in this kind of new world, and he's not the kind of person that can just accept change. So that's so the kind of the intensity and the violence comes from a very kind of like character driven point from him. He's not just violent to people; he's violent to himself as well.
It's his way of expression. Like it's so very well encapsulated in the character, but damn, he's intense.
He's not based on anyone that I know. Like I'd be scared of knowing someone like him. But, we all have like we all have periods of like doubt and self-loathing, I suppose, and other things like that. And he is just, that's just that taken to a certain degree. And yeah, there will be like a trigger warning for basically because of him in the book. And I think you can actually just flag the actual chapter.
That's a good idea.
What it is, just in case people want to kind of just skip that chapter or just kind of skim read it. But also as well, like the thing that the trigger, I don't want to kind of give any spoilers for, but the thing that the trigger warning would be about, I mean, I can just say it's like it's a self-harm kind of thing. It's signposted throughout the book, like it's going to happen at some point.
It doesn't come out of nowhere. You build it up beautifully, and you know something intense is going to happen with him. What was the hardest scene for you to write? Are we going back to that same?
I think, I mean, you know what, to be honest, like that wasn't that hard, because like I knew him, what he was going to be from when I first created him. Like I knew what his path was going to be, and I know what it is going to be further on. So that kind of yeah, obviously they're not pleasant scenes to write, where people are like, you know, doing what he's doing, and to himself and to other people. Because you haven't met people that, thankfully, I've never been in that kind of mindset where I've wanted to kind of self-harm or anything like that, or anything. But I've certainly had self-loathing and doubt, and you know, so you can pull on that. But I've met people that have done those things, and you know, it's you want to kind of, if you're going to deal with it, you want to kind of treat it with respect and care, but you also don't want to shy away from it as well, because it is a serious aspect. But it wasn't particularly tough to write, because like I knew what I wanted to do with it, and his chapters all the way through, from start to finish, from me writing it and development edits and then editing, barely changed at all. Actually, they were pretty much intact straight away. They're probably the toughest scenes to write were anything to do with Brina on her own. But yeah, Brina, yeah, because in the first book, Brina, you only ever see her or interact with her through Colleen's point of view.
Yeah.
So in this book, obviously that continues. You see her through multiple characters' point of view. Oh no, two characters' point of views. Yeah. So you see her in a couple of different lights. But and also she has her own POV in this book, and that was really tricky. That was kind of tough. So you obviously you read the first draft version, which is weird, because it's not really a first draft, because the way I write, it's I edit as I write.
Yeah.
So when I kind of like send something off to someone, like a full thing, I've probably edited it 3 or 4 times, probably.
Yeah.
At that point. But like you read the first version of it, so her POV chapter in the final book, she has a couple of different POV books, but there's a main chunk of her where she's on her own and she's interacting with people that are like her. And in the finalized book, that I think is 2 chapters or maybe 1 longer chapter, I can't really quite remember. But in the original one, it was like about 4 chapters, and it was spread out, and there was going back and 2 between her and Colleen. And I think it was like, no, there's some good stuff in it, but there's quite a lot of repeated stuff in it as well. And it was just, I mean, it was one of those things where it was like when you go into a character for the first time and seeing things from their point of view, you kind of like what's important to kind of get across.
Yeah.
So at first I was kind of like, everything is important.
Yeah.
Needs to know everything. And the thing that she's dealing with is a real kind of like heavy kind of thing as well. Like, you know, she's she's an elf, and elves in this world are not treated particularly nicely. And she's kind of got divided loyalties to an extent, and she meets people of her own kind who don't appreciate who her traveling companions are.
Yeah.
She kind of sees their plight a little bit more, which she's aware of anyway, but it's kind of like a bit of a reminder to her. So that tweaked quite a lot, because you might have noticed the differences between obviously the date's a lot shorter, but some of the stuff that kind of happens in there, there's a slightly different arc there as well now, just to kind of get that right. But yeah, that was a tricky one. But again, the events of the thing didn't change much. It just got condensed. A lot of tweaking, and there was a lot of just getting that to kind of work in a way where it's like, this is her character, this is how she thinks and feels, and this is what is happening. Instead of being like, here is like everything. Right?
Yeah.
That was
she's totally my favorite character. And yes, I love the new scenes with her. That tightening up of it, it's just made me love it more. So who is,
I like her as well. I like her.
Yeah. So who is your favorite character?
Who is my favorite character? It's tough. I don't know. Nexus is one of my favorites. I just think it's very compelling, which is not to like blow my own trumpet or anything, because
Oh
like, you
no,
know, I'm not one of these people that are like, this is amazing, I love it. You see like writers that are like, I've just written this and it's like it's the best thing that I've ever written, and I'm in love with this. No, I'm not one of those people. I'm kind of like, it's fine. Right? But I do think next season is quite compelling. It is a really good arc. I like Vetigan quite a lot, and Vetigan before what happens to him at
yes,
the end of the first book.
yeah,
He's
I'm still
very
angry with you about that. So you know,
well, you know, that. Well, when I said before that there's no one really based on people that I know, he's based on my granddad quite a lot. And my granddad basically raised me. And I lost him at a very early age. So he is very much based on the memory of my granddad,
oh
like
wow,
how he was with Colleen and everything, like, you know. Um, and so obviously I don't give him a nice time, but I don't give anyone a nice time.
no, you really don't.
Like Cade is like Cade is probably the character that is closest to my personality in all of the books, and background, I suppose, as well, in a lot of ways. Like, but I give him the hardest time out of everyone. So I don't know
Okay,
what
yes.
I don't know what says about me. But yeah, I don't know. I really like him. I really like Nexus. I really like Brina and Clean. I like all of them.
You can't pick a
My
favorite.
my favorite character is one that hasn't appeared yet.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Although he's mentioned a couple of times in the or he or she. I've not decided if I've not decided like what their sex is yet, or gender or anything like that. I know what role they're playing in the story, and I actually might just go with non-binary for them. Actually, like I've been kind of thinking about it because in my head I can't really figure out who they are.
Yep,
Um, so I was kind of thinking that might be quite
maybe
quite
that's who
cool.
they are. They don't
Maybe
fit
that is who they are.
into the category.
Exactly. And yeah, so they're mentioned a couple of times in Path of War, actually, in the chapter kind of introductions, and another character mentions them as well.
Cool. I can't wait.
They're a philosopher and a historian. So I know what role they're going to play, and I know like what their personality is going to be like. So I know all that kind of stuff and everything. I just not really decided, like, you know, what they look like, what they sound like, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'll think about that when I come to kind of really write a book. Like, I'm really, really excited to bring them into the book, because this is a character that I was kind of thinking about since the first book, and I was like, you know, they're going to be in it at some point, because the series is going to go into some very weird places. That was one of the things from the start, and I hopefully I've planted the seeds for that in the second one, because there is a bit of a discussion about like philosophy of like the
Yes.
magic and everything like that. So it's kind of like that's when this character is mentioned, actually. So it's
Ah,
always been planned to go a little bit weird in some places, and this character is the one that kind of brings the weirdness.
cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so what from your life has influenced your writing in a surprising way?
Hmm.
We have a stumper.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because obviously you sent me the questions before. It's not, so it's like it looks like I've just not thought about them. But I have thought about this. But I was kind of like, what is the best kind of one to? There's some things that have influenced it that aren't really surprising when I think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, well that explains that. And sort of stuff. But I suppose like I kind of write a lot of characters that are very like particular about things. Um, that are very I write a lot of characters that have like a very kind of um, cemented view of the world.
Yes.
of their world is, right? So like Colleen looks at things very, very black and white sometimes.
Yeah.
Brina does, and Locke does, and other people. And even in my other series as well, people look at things in a very kind of, and they only kind of change their way of thinking if they're confronted with something that is like irrefutable. Like Nick Halloran is like an atheist at the start, and then he's
Yes.
confronted with the fact that like he's going to heaven, and then he's
Yeah.
like, oh, actually, yeah, I see that. So he's like, well, I cannot ignore this. This is the truth,
Yeah.
right? So we were talking before we started, like I was diagnosed with autism like a couple of months ago, and I didn't. That is kind of influenced when I kind of create characters. Like I kind of look at things where it's like, okay, this is what they do, and I kind of describe lots of like particular kind of things that characters do, like they might fiddle with something or they might do something like this. I think it's all stuff that I do, and it's like everyone must be like this, but everyone isn't like that. Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's interesting to challenge characters' point of views. And what like, you know, Solitude Shadow has been reviewed like really, really well, and lots of people really like it. But I always find it fascinating how people kind of like take sides with the characters, and like and some people like I couldn't get along with Colleen because like I didn't agree with her on this matter. And I always find that really fascinating because, like, well, you know, you don't have to agree with the characters. It's fine not to agree with them, right? And it's fine not to like some of the main characters as long as you find them compelling or whatever. But there's this thing where it's like if someone is perceived to be like the hero of a story, like they have to be doing the right thing all the time, which
that's not
you know,
realistic.
that's not realistic. It's not
Yeah.
life. And you know, some of my favorite characters and it's a very kind of epic fantasy, old school epic fantasy, black and white kind of thing, where it's like Aragorn, and you look at the difference between Lord of the Rings movies and Lord of the Rings films.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, movies and books. Movies and films are the same thing. Movies and books. So in the books, he's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be king. It's great. That's what I'm here to do, and that this quest is what I've been waiting for, and I'm all good. I'm going to be the king. And he's like heroic character. He's great. All this kind of stuff. And in the movies, he's still a heroic character. He's very virtuous and he's very, you know, he tries his best to help the hobbits and Gandalf and whatever. But he's got lots of doubt. He doesn't want to be king. He looks at his bloodline about how they failed with the ring. Like, you know, he feels he has a weakness and he doesn't want to do it. And that's it makes him more compelling, right? And he's may be right, he may not be wrong or whatever. But it's a different take than the books. It's a more modern take.
Yes.
Because like one of my favorite series is Wheel of Time, and like, you know, the main character is probably Rand, and there's huge amounts of people in the Wheel of Time fandom that don't like him. Like he's just an idiot, and like he's all the time. There's this and there's this, and it's like, well, you know what? He's a sounds like a real guy to me. Like he's a guy who was like given all this power at the age of like 19, and he's like 19, 20, 21, 22 in the books. And he's had like these life-changing things happen to him, and he's not always going to make the right decisions. And
I like that. I like that relatability. It's more
relatable. It's a bit more challenging. Like it's good to challenge readers, I think, sometimes. And sometimes people don't want to be challenged, and that's fine too. Like, and there's things for people that want to just read heroic things about heroic people, and that's great. And I like to read those stuff sometimes too. But I just find it more maybe because like I find a lot of things challenging in my life. So maybe I would write things that weren't challenging, but I'm always kind of like, well, you know, what's the most, that's the way I kind of always approached each book that I write, is like, oh, right, what is the most challenging thing that I can do to this character at the moment in their life?
And then throw a few more obstacles at them.
Throw a bit more. Yeah. And a few more, right?
Yeah.
And I think in Path of War, like Cade is the perfect example of that, because it's just like
The poor bastard, he can't catch a break.
Why I treat him so badly? Like, he must have a really great payoff coming at some point where it's like something nice happens to him at some
Oh,
point.
I bloody hope so.
Yeah, that'd be nice for him. But yeah, he is someone that's like every single time something is kind of resolved, it's like, well, what's the next worst thing that can happen to him?
Yep. Poor bastard must just be going, yeah, I'm done. I'm laying
Yeah.
down now. Like,
But that's the great thing about him, though. He never does. He's
no.
always. But what happens at the end of this book? Who knows? What mindset he's going to be in.
Yeah, true.
Book 3.
Yeah. Oh God. Sorry. I'm going far out, poor Cade. Okay, so what's the most important lesson you've learned since you've started writing?
Show people your work as early as possible. Is one of the most important things. And that's not to say that like you're letting other people write the stuff or influence it in ways that you don't want to do. Like ultimately the story is yours, but you can have like a picture of the story and all the characters in the world in your head, and you might write something that is like, yeah, I understand this because
You have the movie going. Yep.
right. But other people might not, and it might be too much, or it might be not enough, and this sort of stuff. And if you get to like, especially if you're writing something very, very long, get to the end of something, and then you start showing it to people, it might mean that you have to go back and do a massive restructure and massive changes. So the way I do it, I mean, you beta read this, but I have 2 different. I have you, and I have someone else. And with you, I send it when it's finished, but my other person, I send it to every 3 chapters.
Oh wow, cool.
So they see like a much rougher version of it, and I do it that way because I think 3 chapters is a good enough chunk. And in the first book, I was changing POV every chapter, so 3 chapters would have been like, and those 3 POV characters, so it would have been a chunk of their story. Whereas in Path of Walk, it was a little bit longer. I was kind of spending a bit more. I was doing like kind of little mini story arcs, I suppose. But it's still kind of stuff where it was like, is there a problem with this bit? Does it work? Does it on this kind of stuff? So if I was to do it the other way, and obviously the first thing that I sent through, so the first version that you read was like 140,000 words. If that was the first time that someone saw it, there would have been a lot of more stuff for me to do, and the story wouldn't have been enjoyable for people. So yeah, I do it in little chunks like that with that, because I just think that, like, if you're writing and your goal is to be published, like either self-published or by someone else or whatever, then someone's going to read your work eventually, right? And yeah,
That's the dream, isn't it?
Right. And I do come across writers that are like, oh no, I don't want to use beta readers, I don't want this, I don't want this. And it's like, someone is going to read it, and it's better to get the most amount of people to read it before it comes out, to make sure that it works before sending it out to people you don't know to read. Because you get some people, and their standards are exceptionally high, and some reviews. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is a book called Hyperion by Dan Simmons, who I think is an amazing writer. Some of his reviews on Goodreads are absolutely brutal, right, for that book. Like 1-star reviews, and the scoring's ripping it to shreds. Like, this is my favorite book of all time, right? So you can't. There's no accounting for taste and all that kind of stuff. So if you're sending something out that hasn't been looked at yet by anyone, and it's self-published and whatever, then it's going to be a lot worse than a beta reader, right? But it's all about getting the right beta readers as well. You want different beta readers for different things and for different kind of reactions, but you also want them to be honest, and to actually. And what you have to keep in mind is that, like, they're trying to help you have the best story that you can possibly do. They're not trying to write it for you or change the way that you want to write it.
No.
And I would avoid those kind of people that do that, let them go and write their own stories. But like a good beta reading team is like essential, I think.
Yes, I can completely agree. But I love that idea of like getting someone to beta in chunks when you're writing a bigger thing. That's never actually thought about that, but that's actually really cool.
Yeah, it works well for me because like then I write the three of them, and then when they're kind of reading and doing notes on it, I'm writing the next three. So it's kind of like, a nice kind of
flow and rhythm too.
Kind of rhythm to it and everything. And then there's not that you're not waiting for ages then for notes to come back, and you're not out of the flow of or the zone of that one that you're working on at the time. So it just works. It works for me. So it might not work for everyone else, but it works for me.
That's very cool. Okay, what book have you read recently that you would recommend? Because my TBR is obviously not big enough.
Yeah. I've read so many books recently because you're in the same team as me, so we're in indie fantasy addicts.
So
group,
much fun.
That's the summer reading challenge, isn't it? So we're in the same group. So I recommended Ink to you recently, and you're reading that at the moment. So I can't really.
Yeah, Inked is amazing. That's by Rachel Renner, is it?
Rachel Renner,
yeah. I've just started it, and I'm like, okay, let's get through this. I need to get back to it. Come on, man. No, that's really good.
She mainly does urban fantasy, and she has a complete series called the Lightning Conjurer series, which is really good. And then she has a standalone called The Girl Who Speaks to Ashes, which is like about a main character who's got epilepsy, which is like really, really great as well. Each book gets better, but Inked is probably a best one. So the last one that she wrote, so each book gets better. And the second one is out in September, I think. But yeah, I can't, because obviously you'll be talking about that in one of your videos soon, so I can't really just say.
Oh, Inked.
Yeah, because you'll be reviewing that soon, I think.
Oh yeah.
So I can't say what else has been really good that I've read recently. I'm doing a lot of rereading at the moment. I get a lot of like that's my brain. I love rereading stuff and rewatching things. It's like a really comfort thing for me. I can't. Yeah. No, Inked would be the best book. Yeah, that would be the best book that I've read.
Awesome. Yes, I like I said, I have just started it and I'm loving it.
I am reading something else actually that's not out yet and won't be out for a little while, but it's by a certain Neen Cohen.
Yes.
I think people are going to like it. Yeah, I think people will like it. So, yeah.
That makes me so happy and a little bit blushy, but that's okay. I guess I'll forgive you for that one. All right. So you're going on a road trip. Which character from Path of War are you taking with you?
Jesus. Well, it wouldn't be Nexies. Imagine, what would we talk about?
Oh God, you wouldn't. You'd be too scared, wouldn't you?
Pure paranoia the entire time. There's the thing is with that world is there's some like inherently really good people in it. They might not always make the best decisions, but Colleen's a really good person, and she's fun. She's very forthright, and she's very opinionated, which is fine. She knows her own mind. Well, she argues with herself quite a lot, so she doesn't really know her own mind. She has a lot of doubt. She'd be good. Vertigan, obviously, before his whatever happened to him in the first book.
First book, Vertigan. Second book, not so much.
Not much second book, Vertigan. Cade, again, like his issues aside, would be best. But I think the most kind of solid character who would kind of like look after you, and he would give you a little cuddle if you needed one, and he would make sure you were eating and drinking. Is Tilo? He would be.
I was positive you were going to say him. He would.
He'd just look after everyone. He'd be fine. He'd have a lot of. He was one that I was really glad to kind of delve into a little bit more
Yeah.
in the second book, because in the first book again you see him from he
Other
doesn't speak anyone
perspectives.
else's. Yeah, he doesn't speak anyone's language. It's just little smatterings and stuff. And the second book, you kind of get to know him a lot better, and you kind of there is a big sequence of his that I actually cut from the book. You read it in the first bit, and it's been cut. It's the only time I've ever cut anything massive like that from a book. But we are thinking about releasing it in some way and maybe expanding it into like a little novella.
Oh, I love that idea. I was so sad to see it gone. I was like,
Yeah.
what? What?
I
Yes.
just kind of think it might be a little bit boring as a standalone kind of thing, because it's just like kind of a slice of his life, I suppose. But and the idea that I've got to expand it is more of a slice of his life, which I think, like, people that like the series might enjoy reading, but people that haven't read it, and if you're kind of giving it away for free or something, people be like, what is this? So I kind of have to think of a way of what we're going to do with it, but it'll come out at some point. I just don't know what kind of way it'll come out. But that was the first things that I wrote, and that was actually the prologue for the book originally.
Yes.
Um, Back in the day when I first started writing it, and then I was like, I got about midway, just before Colleen. Oh, it's about Colleen's little adventure, and I was like, I need a through line for this book a little bit. I think this is it, what I'm dealing with here. So I went back and added in some more things to do with what Colleen was doing on this adventure,
Yeah.
and then I was like, I think this prologue is too slow to start the book off. No, so I wrote a new prologue, which is the prologue now.
Yeah.
And then that was the first chapter. So the Tilo thing was the first chapter. And then I was kind of like, the next Seas chapter is a much better first chapter than the Tilo one. So I moved the Tilo one, and I was like,
So
doesn't
he
really
just kept
work.
moving it till it was gone.
Right? And then I was like, I'm just going to take it out. I'm just going to take it out. Because it's kind of one of those things as well, where it's like, there's no information that's given in it that isn't picked up at some other place in the story through a more organic kind of way. Yeah, it will. I don't know. It'll come out at some point. I don't know how.
I get why it was taken out, but I still really enjoyed it. So when I first opened the second version of it, I was like,
it's gone. Yeah,
hang
it's
on,
gone.
what
I enjoy
is
it
this
too.
the same book?
I enjoy it too. Like, I really liked seeing him at home. I liked his relationship with his wife.
Yeah.
I like the stuff with Kern, who is obviously is in the first book. I like the kind of like trippy kind of sequence as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I liked it too, but it's just one of those things. It was right for the book not to have it in it, I think.
And sometimes that happens. Scenes that you love and scenes that are beautiful don't fit that book, and you have to kill
Yeah.
your darlings, whether you like
Yeah,
it.
that's right, and that's the same with the chapter I was talking about earlier, the Brina stuff, and it kept on cutting back a lot more to like Colleen. So basically, like, Brina goes off to do something, and like Colleen is kind of like pining for her to come back, and she's bickering with Vettigan. And there was some stuff that I love between them, some really nice back and twos and stuff that is just gone now. I've got it in a document on my Google Drive. But like, it's not there anymore. Like, and I really enjoyed some of that stuff, but it was kind of like, do we need this to be as long as it is, and can we do it a bit shorter?
It's the pain of editing, isn't it? It's just
Right. Yeah, but it
part of
makes
the
sense.
process.
It makes sense in the end. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, one day it'll come out. But yeah, Tilo would be he
Oh,
would
brilliant.
he would drive all night as well, and he would let me sleep when he
Yes.
would clean.
He would just protect. Like you'd not have to worry the whole time. Like
Yeah,
he's like the ultimate protector. He'd change you got a flat
he's,
tire, he'd be right on it.
he would. He's got a beautiful singing voice as well.
Oh, see, there you go. That's right. Awesome. Well, here's the cover again, if I can get it up. Yay. Is that visible?
Colleen and Brina, yeah. Some rando dude as well.
Yeah, which could be, yes, interesting.
But just a he is just a rando. He is no one in particular.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I
Just a
like that.
rando. Yeah.
And where can viewers, readers, people interested find all things David Green?
So the best place is my website, which is just davidgreenwriter.com. I have a link tree, but I can never. I've tried to say it, and I just sound insane when I try and say it. So
well, I'll get the link for the link tree off you, and I'll put it in the comments as well.
Yeah, but like pretty much everything is on my website as well. Actually, I need to update it actually because I've not updated it. So maybe not. But yeah, davidgreenwriter.com. So my link tree is linktr.ee/David Greenwriter.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, David Green's going to do a reading from Path of War.
Okay, so yeah, I'll do a little brief explanation because this is like I'm told this is about halfway through the book. So one of the main characters, Colleen, and someone who she's come across is doing a rescue attempt for someone that in this place called Willow. And up until this point in the story, she's been quite reticent to use the spark for various reasons that you'll find out. So the spark is her magic. So they have to basically, two people have to infiltrate this palace. It's called the Patriarch's Palace. So the best way to do it is to go through a window in a tower, and then they just try to basically make it up as they go along. It's like in pure Star Wars tradition. So yeah, this is and this is the bit that was just like one line in the outline that ended up being a big section, or part of it anyway. So it's the end of one of the chapters. So dust exploded around them as they landed. Stifling a cough, Colleen glanced around at the circular room. Stacks of shelves filled it, artifacts of all shapes and sizes crammed here and there without any rhyme or reason. Squinting, she could only make out their shapes. The moonlight through the window lending the room its only light. Approaching the nearest stack, Colleen let out a soft whistle. This is pre-Empire stuff, back when Willow was the capital of the Arcaria Duchy. Pulling a relic clear and waving a hand to chase away the dust, Colleen offered the narrow, metallic device to Mark. As long as her arm, the artifact had a peculiar ring on top of what looked like a crossbow trigger under a wooden shaft. It narrowed to a tube, a circular opening at its end. Wonder if anyone remembers what this did. They say the Arcaria Duchy fought a bloody war against Springhaven, holding them off even though they had few sparkers of their own, Mark muttered, staring down the hole at the end of the tube. Perhaps they had special weapons. It was over 1,000 years ago, and a nation of constant warfare means much history is lost. Progress too. Plus, the victors are the ones who end up telling the stories. His finger found the strange trigger and squeezed. Dust exploded in his face, and Colleen tried her absolute best not to laugh. She failed, the snigger escaping in a strangled choke. That's progress, all right, a dust blower. Mark glared at her, eyes shining in his dirty face. He ran a finger across his cheek and frowned as it came away black. He winced as he raised it to his lips and tasted it. Barrels stood at the end of the stacks, and Mark approached one. Removing the lid, he coughed as more black powder puffed into his face. God's teeth, what is this stuff? He snarled through a hacking cough. Right, if you've finished playing, Colleen raised an eyebrow and tried not to laugh again. She opened a second sight and scanned the surroundings, finding no blooms of spark close by, though she detected concentrated flashes deep beneath her feet. A swirl of colours with its fair share of pulsating darkness. See that? Hard not to, Mark grumbled, setting the strange relic back where it came from among the other dust-ridden oddities. Reckon that's where we're heading. They must be questioning Maria right now. You're probably right. We need to get her sooner rather than later. Good. Now follow me. Colleen crossed to the door and placed her hand on the handle. I think this is going well so far. She swung the door open and let back with a gasp. Patriarch's beard. I thought I heard a dropping noise. How'd you two get in here? A guard in silver and gold chainmail armour stood in the doorway, one arm stretched towards the handle, the other holding a rust-coloured blade. Colleen's mouth hung open as their eyes met. She threw her thumb over her shoulder. Captain wanted us to take an adventurer. Which captain? The guard asked, taking a step forward and raising his sword. Why are you dressed like commoners? Well, enough talk, Matt growled, and a bloom of spark caught Colleen's attention. Yelling, the guard flew forward, tendrils of air wrapped around his waist and plunged towards Mark. The sparker raised his rapier, the point driving through the guard's eyeball. Pulling his blade free, the corpse dropped to the ground, blood pooling beneath him. Mark kicked him over, then bent, getting to work at unfastening the guard's clothes. He glanced up and blinked at Colleen's horrified stare. What? You said to improvise if anything went wrong. He turned back to the corpse. Plus, these look like they'll fit me. Didn't want to get a hole in them. God's teeth, you got a drunken hole in him, didn't you? We're staging a rescue, Colleen. You think the guards, sparkers, and whatever else in here is just going to stand aside and let us on our merry way? There's going to be blood. Let's just hope it ain't ours. And I will leave it there.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much. So once again, Path of War, it comes out on July 15th. I'll put all the links down below. Thank you so much, David, for joining me today. And congratulations on the sequel.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.